We are starting right now. We are going through a new moon in Pisces with the combination of the eclipse cycle starting. A lot of emotionality that potentially be coming through, but I need to stress this. The nice thing about working through the emotionality, I just wrote a whole article about this over on the stack, right? This is the energy. This is the perfect energy for emotional reset. And what do we articulate? Or what do we mean by emotional reset? The observation of being able to effectively identify how we feel, but also in the space by which we energetically recognize or identify the preciousness of our emotions, right? Our emotions are a precious resource, right? The space by which we energetically honor our emotions is often articulated upon how we effectively express them, right? It's the modality by which we recognize and identify how we are effectively working through things or what it is that we're trying to effectively resolve. And what's beautiful about this, right? And this is what we need in relationality to loving the process, right? When we're in a healthy spiritual space, it's not the fact that we're perfect, but the modality by which we work to effectively close the gap, if you will, or identify what it is that we're trying to do and finding better ways of doing it, right? Even in the space of our emotions, I feel like what we're effectively seeing is a lot of that work that is recognizing and identifying upon the healthy emotions that allow us to be able to energetically fortify direction, right? How easy it becomes, right? How easy it becomes when we honor our emotions. Because, and I need to point this out, that doesn't mean that all of our emotions are worth being honored. The way that we identify and recognize the emotions that we are effectively working to heal is being able to articulate and put directions towards them. It's the healthy direction that creates the space of identifying what that is. And so we see that for a lot of the energy that is invested in doing that work, right? The beauty that we identify there has to do with working through that process of personal emotional expansion. Now, this is having a different impact depending on where you find yourself on the frequency cycles. And we're going to start by talking about the energy that is currently in solitude. Now, the energy, we saw that there was a relationship shift that happened around the time of the most recent Capricorn new moon cycle. A lot of the energy that's coming together in relationship right now are working into the world card. And what do we see? The lessons of the world card. It's understanding, right? Building into the context of being centered in the self. And being centered in the self does not mean that one is perfect, but the reciprocal work that we put towards our own self that immediately becomes beneficial to the energy that is around us. What are the two cards that we see that are happening right now for a lot of that work in solitude? We've got here the Seven of Pentacles in its upright, in combination with the King of Swords in its upright. So these are very, and I want to describe this, these are very grounding, stabilized cards, even in the midst, right? Even in the midst of an energetic eclipse cycle. And I want to describe this too, right? One of the things that we often recognize with eclipse cycles is working through, right? And I like to describe this when I'm reading into eclipse energy. It's not the fact that eclipses create things that are not there. But what happens is it's like the energy that can take something small, right? It's like the molehill that becomes a mountain. Those modalities by which something that is granular feels like it becomes energetically overwhelming or amplified. Now, what's beautiful about that, when we recognize that, it allows us the ability to work through the eclipse much like a deep dive, right? Right? The ability, like when we understand that the quality and nature of the eclipse allows the observation of something microscopic to feel magnified, then we can apply that force of effort into states or spaces by which it helps us to effectively expand, right? It's the exposition of something micro that becomes macro in the space by which we're able to effectively deeply feel something, right? And that heightened sensitivity becomes a gift. So the thing about this particular eclipse cycle is it may feel a little polarizing depending on how much shadow work you've done, right? Because, and this is what happens when you work into an eclipse cycle and you're carrying a lot of fear, right? If you've got a lot of fear in you and then you enter eclipse cycle, the fear gets magnified, right? You'll start feeling like it's everywhere. The fear is everywhere, right? But when we're able to recognize that, right, and we understand the proportionality by which we're navigating the eclipse, then we're able to effectively identify what it is that we're working through within, right? Something that we ourselves are working to get stronger at. And I want to describe like what we effectively see, right? That like and this is what we mean. Like this is what we mean when we say the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Because when you're in a fear space, you avoid things. And when you energetically avoid things, you move right into them because it's a space by which we energetically, and I like to describe this, like the space by which we don't necessarily want to like work through something becomes everybody else's energetic burden, right? And this is why, and I like this is always why I like the space by which we work through a new moon in Pisces, right on the heels of a full moon in Leo during Aquarius season, because it's a conversation that articulates the force of our love, right? When we love things, we find courage to do things that we've never done before, right? It's the space by which we amplify and articulate the care that feels that it moves beyond the self. And so I feel like what's beautiful about that, particularly for a lot of the energy that is working through a lot of this path work, is this is the energy that is in solitude working on relationship. And why are you saying, you're saying to me, you're saying if they're in solitude, why are they working on relationship? Who says that you need to be in relationship to work on relationship, right? When you recognize that the vested effort that you put in yourself, the ability to find joy, right? Recognizing that there's no manifestation on the planet that has joy on the other side of it. This is often the confusion that we have, right? You'll often see this in the journey of those who are energetically unsatisfied, right? What did the unsatisfied say? I'm unsatisfied now, but you rest assured, right? You rest assured if I had that relationship, if I had that person, if I had this, if I had that, I would be in a bliss state. No, you wouldn't. No. We don't find bliss on the other side of manifestations. The bliss that we bring with us is amplified in healthy partnership. So this is what this like, and I like to point this out. This eclipse is actually not being seen right now. Right, this eclipse is way nobody's seeing this eclipse right now unless you're in Antarctica. Unless you're hello from Antarctica, enjoy the eclipse because it works into like that. But even that is a continuation of this energetic lesson, which says, right, if we don't find the bliss, there's no manifestation on this planet by which we'll derive it, right? We find the bliss that we carry into our manifestation goals and into our relationships. So that's why we see that a lot of energy right now is not building into relationship like this, right? They're not looking around. They're working on it within. They're amplifying their bliss because as you amplify your bliss, you move towards ideal partnership. You become very protective of that bliss, right? You're like, I made this myself, right? And this is what we also see that a lot of those relationships are doing right now, right? There's a little bit of conscientiousness. There's a new sense of conscientiousness that some of these relationships are bringing into partnership. They're very protective, right? They're this is my bliss. I worked very hard on it, right? But they're working into right? They're working into the uncomfortability. Taurus coming out of retrograde in Uranus coming out of retrograde in Taurus, right? The only way we find, the only way we energetically expand is by being able to feel energetically uncomfortable in the best way possible, potentially as it relates to things we feel vulnerable about. So, what do we effectively see that they're doing, right? They're getting better at articulating the vulnerability that they feel, trying to move towards partnership while also trying to protect their bliss, right? They're articulating to each other about that conscientiousness. Center card for today's spread, and this is moving us into those moon relationships. Now, the moon relationships were the energetic lessons that we were working through between the time of that Capricorn new moon that we experienced and up leading to the time that Uranus first went retrograde, which was in September 6th. Center card for today's spread. Woo, Page of Swords. There's so many swords here. We've got like 2 cards in the sword suite. We're actually going to be studying the sword suite tomorrow. If you want to become a part of that tarot class, you still have time to join. Anyone who is a paid subscriber to my stack will have access to that class. What we effectively see for a lot of those moon relationships, and I need to describe this, these moon relationships right now, like they're going through I keep on hearing they're going through some kind of experience by which they're feeling the amplification of energetic victory upon things. And why do we see a lot of that energy right now? Specifically and particularly because for a lot of the energy that is invested in that pathwork right now, one of the things that we're identifying is working through. I keep on seeing these are the 2 energies that we see. These are those moon relationships. Never before. These are very, very purpose driven relationships. These are relationships that have a very, very strong sense of purpose. Never before have they been in a relationship where another person did not say that their purpose was detrimental to partnership. But this is often what we recognize in relationality to having purpose. Our purpose is not detrimental if another person shares our sense of purpose, right? And the space by which we often find healthy partnership is fine. It doesn't require us, right? It doesn't require us to have the same purpose, but the energy that is respective of each other's purpose does not take it personally as they continue to move closer towards it. So we see that that is a lot of the energy that is effectively articulating and recognizing, facilitating and doing that work. But not only are they doing that work, but they're doing the work, they're feeling the energetic relief and release of finally being in a relationship with a counterpart that does not take their purpose personally but profoundly. This brings us into the temperance relationships. Now, the temperance relationships were the relationships that were coming together at the time that we were navigating through the partnerships that were going through the temperance card lessons, which is the mutual work that everything is possible so long as the work is mutual. These were effectively the relationships that were coming together between the time of Uranus going retrograde in September up until the solstice period that we experienced this summer. 2 cards to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with our Justice card in its upright in combination with our 5 of Swords in its upright. A lot of sword energy right now, but I have to admit, I don't mind the sword energy that we're seeing right now. And the one thing I wanna point out, and I like this about the temperance relationships, they're very, very pragmatic. These temperance relationships work through, right? I wanna describe this. It's not the fact that things are perfect, but the fact that it's working through. When we are effectively focused on perfect, we perfect, right? Focusing on perfect is how we perfect. And I keep on getting that for a lot of that energy, that ability of working through something, but not just working through something, the capability by which they effectively articulate, recognize, or define allows for the space by which they're able to effectively clarify. And I like this because I feel like this is a lot of the energy that works through, right? There are no mistakes, there are only lessons, right? The modality by which we effectively work through something in terms of not being energetically hard. I keep on hearing, we don't get hard on ourselves, we get refined, is what I keep on hearing, right? And this is why I feel like this is why that energy effectively builds into that sense of determination because I keep on hearing these are very determined partnerships, right? These are partnerships that are very energetically determined on finding perfect. And they understand that we don't, they keep on hearing, they recognize that they don't they don't hurt each other with what's not perfect, but they work through the context of finding even greater solutions to every energetic problem. So there's a lot of that refinement there, right? There's a lot of that attenuation, but I keep on seeing even in the attenuation, there's a sense of celebration because it's the work that they effectively do in feeling, right? That the healthy relationship that they work through, that every time they go through something, it's like the only time, right? They work for it to be the only time that they themselves are going to energetically experience it. So there's a lot of energy that's very keen on finding those breakthroughs. Now, continuing, right? Moving back towards the energy in solitude, clarification between the Seven of Pentacles in its upright and that King of Swords energy. Can I please get one card to clarify? The Star card. And let's talk a little bit about this Star card that we're seeing right now, because the one thing I want to describe that we're identifying with the Star card is, and I like this for what we're seeing for the energy in solitude right now, right? I feel like a lot of this energy in solitude is remembering their own preciousness, right? And the space by which we work through preciousness is not the space by which we look at ourselves as perfect. Far from it, right? Right? It's not about being perfect. It's about being precious. Because when we identify ourselves as precious, then we see ourselves as a work in progress. And the space by which we feel excited, right? We feel the genuine joy in being able to identify our progress, right? This is a lot of the energy that's reorienting their own perspective on relationship, right? Relationship is not the space that we go to fix our faults. And in fact, often those that look at relationship like like the solution, right? Like somebody being like, I'm a like, it'll fix me. A little relationship would fix me. There's no relationship on the planet that will fix any of us, right? But when we look at ourselves as a precious work in progress, then we see partnership as a continuation of that work, right? We're much more precious in relationality to building into it. And I think that one of the things that we see that's intriguing right now is I see that a lot of that energy is kind of working through, right? They're working through their own excitement as it relates to partnership, working through their frustration in the spaces by which they don't feel like they've found it, but identifying, right? If we can feel it, it energetically exists, right? And they're working to release, like they're working to energetically release any feelings of, I keep wondering, like any feelings of frustration in terms of like, I keep on seeing, like, the space by which the future holds things that we've never experienced before. I keep on seeing it's a lot of the energy in solitude that is healing their relationship to the future, right? Because the future is a gift, because it's the space by which we never, like, we don't know what exists there. And I keep on getting that there's also a lot of work in healing our words, right? Because for a lot of the energy, I just keep on seeing, right? The ability, like the ability not to communicate from a sense of frustration, but from a sense of elation, right? The elation that we give to the future that is a gift because it is the space by which we identify the future that can elate and surprise us. So there's a lot of that energy there. And I feel like even in the space by which they're doing that, they're building into, right? They're building into the vulnerability it takes, right? Because that is understanding and identifying that as long as we bring different standards with us, then the world that awaits us energetically changes, right? And so that's what I keep on identifying because this is the energy that I keep on seeing that is working in solitude. And they're almost looking like they're looking at the journey in solitude and saying, this isn't a journey of solitude. This is a journey of union. This is me finding the energetic standards by which I'm going to energetically find the divine counterpart in relationality to holding oneself preciously. Now, the hard part about that, and this is bringing us into the new relationships that are coming together right now, right? What do we effectively see that is happening for a lot of those relationships? That observation, right? Working into the context of being able to energetically heal, but not just the space by which they're working to energetically heal, but the space by which they're recognizing and identifying and articulating to each other what potentially happened in past connection, right? It's not the last conversation they're having, it's the first because it's a continuation of the energetic lessons that they are utilizing to refine and define upon what it is that they themselves are trying to enter to build into. And we see that for a lot of the energy doing that work, right? It's a continuation of recognizing the sense of being energetically content, right? There's not I keep on seeing the discontentment that they're energetically feeling, right? They're being able to effectively identify and define the discontentment of the self, right? Like something that they're building into to be able to define a better sense of purpose for themselves versus having to navigate another's discontentment. And what often happens when we're not in a space by which we can navigate our discontentment? When we are feeling discontent and we haven't done our shadow work properly, we project our discontentment on everybody energetically around the self, right? It's the observation and this is what we talk about. Like we often go through this with Aquarius season. There's no avoiding anything, right? Because when you're navigating the world in a discontent way, right? It's a space by which you're like, nothing's bothering me. And everyone's like, it's a space by which the others, like everybody else holds your discontentment for you, right? Because it's the space by which they feel it energetically projected off the self. So we see that that is a lot of the energy that's working through like, they're working through those experiences. But even in the state by which they're working through those experiences, they're finding new ways of articulating upon what it is that they identify as the energetic ideal versus what it is that they themselves are healing from. And I wanna describe, like and we're gonna get to that this is bringing us back into those moon relationships. Clarification between the King of Swords and its upright and the Page of Swords and its upright as well. One card to clarify, please. we've got here the 7 of Wands in its reversal. So let's talk a little bit about that 7 of Wands energy, because the 7 of Wands energy identifies and recognizes what we ourselves are working upon, feeling I keep wondering, the energetic elation of working into relationship by which another person does not take our sense of purpose personally. Because what often happens, right? When we have a sense of purpose, we heal our discontentment, right? And it's not the fact that there isn't still a feeling of discontentment, but the beauty of having a sense of purpose is it really helps you focus on why you feel energetically discontent, right? Because having a sense of purpose is being able to identify what one's ideal is, right? It's working towards an ideal, and it's very valid. And when we're able to define that, then it creates that sense of working towards that ideal. When we don't have it, right, we often feel restless, right? When we lack a sense of purpose, we often feel restless because we look to the world to satisfy us instead of answering the call in terms of effectively changing, like working towards the world that becomes energetically better. And when you're dealing with manifestation, it should always feel like you're answering the call, right? Which is the observation of not saying, "Where is it?" Right? It's not the space of going, "I don't know where it is. Where is it?" Right? But the space by which we are effectively able to move towards something with a sense of proportion and determination. So we see that for a lot of the energy that is effectively doing that work, right? They're working, and I keep on saying, never before have they been in a relationship with someone that held their purpose as preciously as they themselves held it. And so the space by which they're in relationship with someone who holds their purpose as preciously as their own, what are they effectively finding? New feelings, some of them potentially not good, in relationality to the healing that they've had to navigate, in relationality to being hurt in past experiences by which another person took that sense of purpose personally instead of profoundly. So it's I keep on getting, for a lot of these moon relationships, it's bittersweet right now because they're building into that healthy relationship that is allowing them to be able to move towards their purpose like they never have before. And at the same time, there's a lot of feelings that are coming up about a past and being able to see the full shape of what it is that they're healing from. This is bringing us to the energy deep within divine union, those temperance relationships, clarification between that Page of Swords and the Justice card, Devil card in its reversal. And I want to describe, like, there's something about these temperance relationships that we need to talk about right now. And what we're effectively identifying in relationality to those temperance relationships has entirely to do with what it feels like to be in unified partnership. And the observation of working through unified partnership, being in unified partnership is prioritizing the state of not feeling the modality or experience of navigating perpetual crisis, right? It's the observation of being able to recognize and identify the space by which we ourselves are energetically working. And everything I keep on seeing in relationality to a lot of that work has to do, right? It has to do with working through a healing journey, particularly and especially as it relates to navigating from past trauma situations that felt like they created a sense of perpetual crisis. Because I just keep on seeing that for a lot of the energy, like working through, or I keep on getting up like the space by which another person is able to effectively work, like, I keep on seeing, like, the space by which they're not energetically hard on themselves, but working into the context of being able to define and say to one another, like, everything another lesson, like learning to trust each other and trust each other's processes. I just keep on seeing, like, every day a new step in the right direction, every day a new lesson, because I keep on seeing that the space by which they themselves are able to articulate and define the progress is how they themselves are able to identify something that they're working on that is perpetually getting better. Right? It's the space by which they're identifying and working on it that's improving and continuing to improve via that perpetual state of refinement. Now, this brings us to the energy, moving back towards the energy in separation, clarification between our Justice card in its upright in combination with that Five of Swords in its upright. One card to clarify, please. Clarify. Oh, these cards. I literally tried to pull three different cards, and every time I tried to pull it, two cards wanted to come out. So we've got two cards coming out right now. We've got this Six of Swords in its upright in combination with our 10 of Wands in its upright. So let's talk a little bit about the energy that we're seeing there, because it has a lot to do, right? It has a lot to do with working into. I feel like there's a lot of energy right now in separation that is having a breakthrough. And the hard part about it, and I need to point this out, the hard part about it, a breakthrough and a breakdown can sometimes feel very similar, right? The only difference between a breakthrough and a breakdown is feeling very grounded as you're having it's like it's the experience of feeling very energetically grounded as you're working through the as you're working through something in a way by which you're able to effectively navigate it profoundly. And I keep on getting that one of the things that we're potentially seeing that is occurring for a lot of that energy in solitude, and we kind of like, again, to a certain extent, I want to say, like, this has a lot to do with the fact that we've got Saturn and Neptune that have moved into Aries, right? And I like to like Saturn and Neptune in Aries can sometimes feel a little bit like you and whose army. You know what I mean? It's like when compassion is gone, audacity can also suffice, is what I keep on seeing, right? Like, and this is the thing we recognize. Like, this is what we talk about, like, with the sense of care that we bring to things, right? It's often the observation that we recognize that says, like, when compassions run dry, audacity will do, right? It's it's a modality by which we work through something, by which we feel, right? And I like to describe this, like, it's the modality by which we experience something, and I like to point this out. Trauma has a lot of audacity, you know? Trauma's got a lot of audacity, and often the modality by which, and I like to describe this, the audacity that trauma will often like to bring to situations is the modality by which it's like, well, while another person is trying to get their is trying to, like, get their jaw off the floor, right? Another person is working through that. But that's what I keep on seeing with a lot of this energy, right? Because it builds upon, and I like to describe this, healthy spaces have walls that are clear, right? The beautiful understanding of a healthy space with clear walls is the observation that when we have standards, right? We don't cringe in talking about them. We're very eager to. We'll be here all day, right? We'll talk about it, and we'll talk about it ad infinitum. because it's the modality by which we're able to define something that should be very clear, right? Trauma likes to confuse. Trauma likes to overcomplicate. Trauma likes to build into complication. But when we're building into the context of clarity, and this is what we recognize, our clarity acts as shield. Our vulnerability is a gift, right? Anything that makes us feel that our vulnerability is not a gift is trauma, because trauma thrives in confusion. So, our ability of identifying and recognizing and working to understand the self, right? It's working into understanding the self. And even in the space by which another person projects when we start to articulate upon it is the modality by which we recognize the shadow that comes up, right? What like and I like to describe this because this often happens. This is often why you'll notice somebody who's talking very clearly, and what do you start to see happens around them? Others start to project things at them because it's effectively revealing the energetic shadow within a person that hears something honest, and instead of understanding the honesty and embracing it, works through the vibration of the trauma that says to be afraid of the energetic honesty that articulates upon the force of love. And that's difficult, right? Because we have to be very conscientious about that, right? The amplification of the fear that we throw at each other at a moment by which we ourselves are afraid is often the amplification of how little we can energetically hear, right? Because when the ego is too large, it doesn't want to hear any clarity, right? It only wants to hear things that hold up the ego. So when we're working into the space of trying, and here's the thing about it, it's not the fact that egos are bad. A healthy ego is one that we see very clearly. Egos are important. They're the protection point of the soul, right? The streamlined ego is one that you're like, yeah, I'm very aware that it's there. It's supposed to be there. It's doing a lot of good. It's doing a lot of work to protect me, right? I love that ego, right? When we build into the space of having a good relationship with our ego, it's often an ego that's transparent, right? It's a transparent ego. It's the space by which we say, "Yeah, I know." And then you'll notice this. Somebody will like throw a. Someone will throw a like often those with transparent egos, you'll throw an insult at someone and say, "Thank you for the compliment." Right? Because it's the modality or the understanding by which we're like, yes, I'm glad you articulate that. That's something that I'm working to thrive within on the self, right? And this is what I keep on seeing with a lot of this energy that is in solitude, right? They're working into the space of saying the best way to come into relationship is becoming good with the self, because that love that you bring to the self is the best protection that you have in finding healthy partnership. Because when you bring a love of the self into an unhealthy relationship, what is the first thing you're going to hear? You're so obsessed with yourself. You think you're so great. Yeah, I do. So should you. Right? Yeah, I do. So should you. So should all of us. We're all absolutely precious. And that ability of being able to recognize and identify the force of compassion is our highest form of protection, right? Then we don't fear rejection. We welcome rejection. We literally understand that as we move towards perfect partnership, prepare to experience a lot of rejection, right? Prepare to experience a lot of energy by which you walk towards someone and say, "Hi, I love myself. Do you love yourself? How dare you come in here? How dare you come in here with that love of yourself? How dare you come in here? Who do you think you are to care about yourself so preciously?" Right? And the modality by which we experience that, and we don't feel that, but the modality by which we take note to it, we say, "Got it. Check." Okay, check. Right? The ability by which we say, "I see, I understand, I recognize, I identify." Okay, right? It's the modality by which we effectively understand and amplify, and that space by which we give ourselves that compassion. This is why I keep on seeing that for a lot of the energy in solitude, they're recognizing that separation is the energetic illusion, right? When you're working towards healthy partnership, start loving yourself. Because as you start loving yourself the way that you aspire counterpart to do, that love will act as lantern to help you find the relationship that's for you. And that's what I see. And that's why we see these new relationships that are coming together right now. The star card in its upright with that 7 of Swords in its reversal. We got, woof, really? All of these? Okay, sorry. We've got We've got 4 cards coming up. We're gonna read all of them because they were all stuck to they were all stuck to the table. It's a Pisces new moon. There's gonna be extra cards. Okay, there's gonna be extra cards. We've got here, oh man, how do I read these quickly? We've got the 2 of swords, the 4 of wands, the 10 of pentacles, the magician in its reversal. There are new relationships coming together that are having conversations on capacity. New relationships coming together, having conversations on capacity. Potentially another person defining the fact that they're healing from past counter relationship by which another person articulated that they were too much to handle. What is too much to handle? When we are, and this is what we recognize, right? The modality by which we feel, right? The modality by which we effectively identify the space. This is the thing I need you need to understand. Manifestation or the relationship has to do with the ability of finding deepened capacity, right? Like this is what we often identify and recognize, right? The ability by which we effectively grow has to do, like this is why we call it a heart opening, right? We find room that was not there. We find strength that we didn't find possible. We find ideas that feel like they were energetically limiting, which is why we have to see past our own energetic limitations, right? Because the modality by which we're able to navigate possible is more of the space by which we understand that a healthy manifestation will stretch you in the best ways possible, right? They'll expand the love you feel. They'll expand the possibility of what you can energetically do, right? And the modality by which we effectively articulate, right? And this is why we talk about working through navigating the discomfort, but in the best way possible, because that's a continuation of understanding what we see with a Uranus coming out of retrograde in Taurus, which says if you want a healthy manifestation, you better be ready to feel a little uncomfortable, right? Because you can't ask for something without being able to make energetic room for it, right? The space by which we effectively identify our own capacity. And this is what I like about this because this is the energy that is experiencing, like they're coming into relationship. They're feeling their hesitation on talking about their vulnerability. And what do we see that they're effectively doing? They're saying, I'm doing something I feel somewhat uncomfortable doing. I'm finding the confidence to articulate upon my vulnerability. This is how I build energetic connection. And the modality by which they're even articulating the discomfort, right? It's not the discomfort that creates contortion, but the discomfort of another saying, this is the sound of me getting energetically stronger at something, which is doing something I did not think I could do before, but finding the capability as I energetically go. And as we move towards those moon relationships, I just keep on seeing with a lot of this energy right now, it may be feeling like go, 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 right? So we've got here the 8 of Wands in its reversal in combination with the devil card in its reversal. One card to clarify, please, clarification coming through right now with that Fool card in its reversal. I love to see a Fool card in its reversal. Love seeing a Fool card in its reversal because a Fool card in its reversal talks about the observation of what feels like a healthy practice, right? It's the ability to effectively be able to navigate something by which one is always growing, always learning, even as you do it again, right? The modality, this is what we talk about in relationality to healthy practice. It's understanding that something cyclical isn't necessarily a negative, so long as you find divinity in what it is that you're energetically cycling through, right? Everything that we see that's in existence builds upon a healthy cycle. And the modality by which we understand, right, those energetic cycles that feel like they fortify us, that feel like they energetically support us, then we allow the context of understanding the refinement point, not in the space by which, and this is the thing about it, not in the space by which we feel frustrated, right? And this is what often happens when we feel like we go through the same thing over and over again, and it feels like nothing changes, then often that is articulating upon what we describe as a block, right? The observation of going through an energetic cycle, but it doesn't feel like there's any point of expansion within it. Whereas when we're doing something in a healthy way, it is the observation of being able to feel something that does, like something that continues, but even as it continues to expand, it continues to grow, it continues to energetically flourish. And so we like to see right now, and I keep on seeing this with a lot of those moon relationships. These moon relationships, I just keep on getting unified purpose, quite even faster, right? The modality by which this energy used to feel that they had to persevere with their purpose through partnership, right? The experience by which this energy has carried a lot of trauma in having to navigate situations by which another person articulated that they were okay with a sense of purpose until it felt like the purpose, right? Until another person started taking the purpose personally, right? This is the energy that almost feels like they look at each other and the relief that they feel is the sense that they see one another and say, I will never take your purpose personally. I will always take it profoundly. I don't see it as an energetic hurdle to partnership, but it is the effective space by which another person cares about another. And that's why we see that that is a lot of the energy that effectively works. I keep on hearing like they work through those things, and it's a feeling, and I keep on hearing it's like they feel that bond that is growing stronger. But what do we see that's happening there? There's a lot of feelings. There are a lot of feelings coming up. A lot of feelings coming up in the process of them building into that, because it's the observation of having to look at the past through the optics of the relationship that now is getting clarity because they're with someone with a unified sense of purpose that's holding their purpose as preciously as they do their own. This brings us to the temperance relationships, clarification between our devil card in its reversal with the 10 of wands in its upright and the 6 of swords in its upright. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with that ace of pentacles in its reversal. I like to see, listen to the thing, an ace is an ace. I don't mind if the ace is in its upright or it's in its reversal. The way I read, aces are always good. Okay. But you'll often, and I feel like this is the thing that we see often when it comes to the ace of pentacles in its reversal. And I sometimes like to read the ace of pentacles in its reversal as adding grease. Is what I keep on describing. And I like to describe this, like the best way I can articulate this is working through the capacity or the experience by which we ourselves, and I like to point this out, right? And this is why I keep on seeing this is the hard part with some of those temperance relationships, right? I can already see it. These temperance relationships are really are at the point by which they articulate and they recognize the fact. They just recognize the fact they hold themselves to a higher standard. Right? They hold themselves, I keep on hearing, they've understood the caveat of a higher standard, which is the modality that says it's okay to have a higher standard so long as you don't hold other people to it, right? It's okay to have a ridiculously high standard so long as you don't hold other people to it, right? It's the understanding. It's often in the space by which this energy effectively works through something in that capacity. I want to describe this. This is why they care about each other so much. This is why they care about each other so much. This is like, I keep on seeing them go, this is my counterpart who holds themselves to an incredibly absurd standard. This is like the energy. Like, this is the energy. Like, this is the energy that they like, I keep on hearing the endearment of the incredibly high standard that they hold for each other, that they don't punish each other, like, they don't punish anybody else with, but by which they hold each other with even more deep, profound care, is what I keep on seeing. And I keep on getting, like, the space by which we identify that Fool card in its reversal with the Ace of Pentacles. Like, what do they say to one another, right? hey, go carefully with those high standards, right? Go carefully, right? Go carefully with those high standards. Because the one thing that they're trying to articulate is when we recognize that we're holding ourselves with incredibly high standards, we can't feel like we're constantly punishing ourselves with them, right? Because there is, and I need to point this out, we don't talk about this enough. There is there is a detriment to moving with too much alacrity towards a higher purpose, right? What is the detriment to potentially moving with too much alacrity to a higher purpose? It's called burnout, right? Like the modality by which we recognize and we navigate things with a sense of proportionality is how we effectively recognize and identify what feels like it is sustainable versus what feels like it's energetically depleting. So we see that for a lot of the energy working through that, right? It's building into the context by which they're navigating situations or circumstances with a sense of care, but also energetically aware of their own tendencies to be overbearing on themselves, is what I keep on seeing. Continuing to get clarification between the Two of Swords, the Four of Wands in its reversal, the Ten of Cups, the Ten of Pentacles in its upright, the the Magician in its reversal in combination with that Fool card in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with that Two of Wands in its reversal. So this is bringing us back. We got to talk a little bit about what's happening right now for some of these moon relationships and situations built upon and based upon the past. Because I feel like what we're seeing with some of these moon relationships right now is some hard feelings coming up in relationality to some of that past work. But this is why I want to describe, like, there's a lot, like, I keep on hearing a lot of energetic celebration right now, but a lot of rumination, celebration, and equal parts celebration and rumination. And why do we see that there's equal parts celebration and rumination that is potentially happening right now in terms of some of those partnerships? This is energy. As I mentioned, they're going through a breakthrough because never before have they been in partnership with someone who holds their sense of purpose as preciously as they hold their own. And the modality by which they see how easy it is to build into a relationship by which they're not constantly feeling like they have to check the temperature of the climate of the partnership, because these are relationships that have had moments by which they thought everything was fine, but another person was harboring something. And so the modality by which they've often had those experiences by which they felt like everything was fine until it was not, right? The space by which they effectively felt that energetic temperature. And this is why we don't harbor in partnership. We get our feelings out because harbor becomes an arbor by which everything falls apart, right? And the space by which another person doesn't know that we're harboring is the detriment of partnership. So the modality by which they were constantly working through experiences by which they articulated another person that articulated that they were fine with a sense of purpose, but truly they were actually harboring. This is a relationship that they're finally breathing a sigh of relief because they're feeling the weight of something being fine and truly knowing that it is fine, right? Not having to work through, not having to work through that confusing modality of another person saying something's fine. Or and I keep on hearing when we lack energetic integrity, then our yeses don't say yeses and our nos don't say nos. So what is happening right now? This is energy that's finally finding that. And they're looking back at a past and they're realizing that they're carrying wounds of integrity. And integrity wounds occur in the space by which another person's yeses don't say yeses or their nos don't say nos. The modality by which we feel wounded because another person lacked the integrity because we didn't recognize that in the time that they said something, they didn't mean it. They were actually harboring. So this is why we see that a lot of that energy, I told you, they're going through a modality of feeling the elation of relationship while also working through the space of healing from those wounds that they're now identifying in relationality to another person's lack of integrity. This brings us to a lot of the energy that's deep within divine union, clarification between the Fool card in its reversal and the Ace of Pentacles in its reversal. One card to clarify, please. Clarification coming through right now with the Knight of Wands in its reversal. So let's talk a little bit about this Knight of Wands and its reversal. We've got a lot of reverse Knight energy here. And a lot of the reverse Knight energy, and I want to articulate this particularly, and we're talking specifically with the energy that's deep within divine union right now, right? And it has to do, and I want to describe it. It has a lot to do with, and like, I want to, the thing I keep on seeing is it works into the context of being able to identify and recognize what feels like, and I want to describe this particularly with those temperance relationships. The space by which we energetically communicate is the observation of being able to effectively be able to define what, like I keep on saying, like, what energetic plans are. And one of the things I keep on seeing for a lot of these temperance relationships, and I just want to describe this, it has a lot to do with this energy being very used to other energy. And this was actually interesting because it was coming up in the non-binary read that we did the other day, which is often the paradox of having the integrity to move away from dramatic situations and another person, like, you will move away, like, and I just keep on hearing this energy articulating this, you will move away from a traumatizing situation, and that traumatizing situation will articulate that you are the source of drama, right? You will move away from traumatizing situations, and what will be the what will be the reliable articulation in being able to recognize that you'll move away from a traumatizing situation, and the traumatizing situation will identify you as the source of drama, right? That is literally the nature of traumatizing situations. The modality by which often you can see a traumatizing situation because the modality by which you make a healthy choice, others try to articulate that you have now become, right? It's very convenient to then effectively try to say, oh, like that person making a healthy choice. No, they're the dramatic one. They're the traumatizing one. They're the one that said that they can't energetically take something. But here's the important thing. When we're in a healthy space, there's no taking anything, right? It's the space by which we recognize and navigate cooperation. It's the space by which, and you'll often see this, like when you're working through an expansion point and you're having to effectively work through things, it's like the space by which how easily, right? How easily something moves or changes is often the articulation of why it feels healthy. And often this is what happens, right? This is what, and I keep on telling you guys, when we got Saturn moving into Aries again almost is triggering a pseudo Saturn return for everybody. Or I don't care where you are right now, you're going to get a little bit of a pseudo Saturn return moment, which is the modality by which you're potentially making a change and another person has some real strong feelings for it, even though you know that that change is necessary and healthy. And what's wild about that is when we are up in our feels in the space of another person making a mature choice, we ruin the possibility of ever having a future with one another, right? And it's often that articulation, it's often that recognition, right? The space by which another person works through another person's energetic resentment, right? This is why I see that a lot of that energy has had to have experiences by which they've had, I keep on hearing, you can't get anywhere in the modality of another person energetically resenting you making healthy choices. And this is why I keep on seeing that there's something about that energy that is articulating that to one another, right? Like often often the sound that you will hear as you're making healthy choices is navigating another person's unreasonable disappointment. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the wrong energetic decision. The observation of being able to articulate why we're disappointed helps us to recognize what feels like it is profound, right? Something that we feel can heal versus something that we need to take personal or the space by which we have to work upon it within. So I keep on seeing that for a lot of the energy working through those modalities, it's having it's working through hard feelings, but it's saying don't be surprised to find hard feelings as you're making healthy choices. In fact, finding hard feelings are probably a sign that you're making really good choices, especially and particularly as it relates to the fact that the only time we should have hard feelings is if we're navigating audacity, which is the space by which another person is making a choice that doesn't necessarily feel like it's beneficial to anyone except the self. So I keep on seeing that that's hard because that's a lot of the energy that is articulating upon the fact that it's not enough to have feelings, right? It's not about honoring every feeling. It's about fortifying the feelings with reason to determine what are the feelings that are reasonable versus feelings that you feel that potentially show the fact that you need to do a little work on the self. Final card for today's spread between the Two of Wands in its reversal in combination with the Knight of Wands in its reversal. We've got here the Four of Cups in its upright. So what are we effectively seeing there with that Four of Cups energy? And I want to describe this, and this has a little bit to do with working through the eclipses. I know that when the eclipse season comes, everybody's like, "Oh no, it's like the sky is falling." Everybody gets a little bit energetically panicked. There's nothing to be panicked about when we're going through eclipse season, right? And yeah, it's true. If somebody is not in the space, here's the thing about it. Eclipses amplify. They amplify. If something is a problem, it's going to feel like a big problem. If something's a joy, something's going to feel like a big joy, right? It's working into the fact that it's I like to describe, whenever I describe it, I'm like, the eclipse season's like someone takes the amp and just cranks it to 11, right? Everything just feels like it feels like everything is a lot more intense. When we recognize that that's the nature of things, we don't let the intensity affect our energetic choices, right? Intensity should not change choice. Right? And the space by which we welcome intensity is usually the way it usually calibrates for how well we navigate eclipse cycles, right? So that's why we're the fire sign energy is fine right now. We're woohoo. But the space by which we articulate working through energetic intensity can also refine our own capacity for things. So make sure if you're feeling and I like to, how I always say this, I'm already going to draw the bottom of the deck on, I knew it. King of Cups in its reversal. So this is all I'm going to say in relationality to feelings. And the one thing we want to be kind of conscientious about when we're going through eclipse cycles, and it has, and you probably heard me say this before, okay? And it has to do with that wild idea, okay? And it's not to say, all right, you've heard me say this before. It's not to say that when you're going through an eclipse season, you can't do something energetically spontaneous. Okay? Spontaneity is fine, but what you want to be what you want to be conscientious of, okay, is the difference between something that is energetically spontaneous in the space by which you've thought about it, you've thought about doing it for a while, and you decide to energetically activate upon it during the eclipse cycle, right? So something that was like rolling around in the brain pan that then you're like, you know what, why don't I do it now? Like that's something helpful. But what you want to avoid, right, is the issue, and I often have this with those I read for, being like, "Why'd you do that?" And somebody being like, it felt like a good idea at the time," and being like, "Was it an eclipse cycle?" And being like, "Yes." I'm like, "Yes, you just got the navigation of working through a lot of the emotionality, the ins like the sudden like, I know what to do in an eclipse cycle that then goes, "Oh no, what have I done?" Right? So it's where I like to describe, if you're ever unsure about that, when you're going through an eclipse cycle, if it's a good idea now and it's just come to you, the nice thing with a good egg is that you can sit on it for a minute. Okay? The nice thing with a good egg, with a good idea, is that you can sit on it for a minute and it's still fine. It's as good idea now as it is in 5 minutes, as it is in 5 hours. But make sure, right, especially as it relates to your feelings, make sure that you're not doing something in the moment during an eclipse cycle that you're like, "I know what I'm gonna do," and then being like, "Oh, right? I let the eclipse get the better of me, right? I don't allow the amplification of the eclipse to move you in an emotional way that steers you further off course, right? And that's just to say, like, make sure that you're navigating situations with gravitas. Right. And that's what we talk about with gravitas, which is not the fact that you feel something, but the space by which you're able to understand the weight of it. That is our daily collective read for today. I want to thank you guys so much for being here and receiving it. Just a reminder, if you would like to book a private reading with me, it is a two-step process. You have to book the reading, you have to pay for the reading. Please make sure you do both if you'd like to have that reading. Most importantly, please remember that I will never, ever, 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 ever reach out to you for a private reading. I will never DM you. I will never PM you. I will never slide into your inbox and tell you that I have a very important message that only I can deliver. The only way you can book a reading with me is if you book one on my site, so I would encourage you to do it there. A couple of updates before we move into personal readings. First and foremost, thank you to everyone who participated in our recent class on the World card. Our next tarot class is tomorrow night. I would like to invite you to join me as we will be studying the court cards in the Sword Suite. Everyone who participates in that class will be learning about the symbology of the cards, the history of the cards. We're going to be working through spread applications, how to read those cards in any direction that they may appear in your own readings. I'm also going to be presenting you a unique spread that you can take from that class to channel the messages of those cards into your own reading. And all you need to do if you'd like to become part of that tarot class program is head on over to my stack and become a paid subscriber. Your paid subscription to my stack is your ticket of entry into our live classes each and every month. You will also, as a paid subscriber, monthly subscriber, have access to over 9 hours worth of material in the Tarot Church Library class system. Now, it's not necessary to catch up. I do my best to give you guys an update on everything we've experienced prior to beginning the next class, but the material is there for you to receive as you're ready to receive it. And you'll have access to a one-on-one chat with me and the other students to ask any questions that you may have in relation to anything we've learned and studied thus far. And if you become a founding member to my stack, not only will you receive a discount on the whole year's worth of classes, but you'll also receive access to over 20 hours worth of material in the Tarot Church Library class system, as well as the opportunity of receiving a complimentary mentorship class with me, where I will meet with you personally to assess where you are on your own personal tarot journey and give you the best insights in terms of how to utilize those classes to the best of your advantage, moving towards your tarot goals going forward. One of the things I tried to do in these classes was make them accessible to the absolute novice tarot reader as well as the seasoned reader. There's definitely something there for everyone. Don't let your lack of experience or your robust experience prevent you from joining us in these classes. And even if you don't become a paid subscriber to my stack, I would encourage you to follow me there to stay up to date on any new offerings or services. I also post my Mystic Meditation articles there, which will give you updates on everything that we're seeing energetically in the cards. I just wrote one recently on this new moon energy that we're currently experiencing. And I also want to let you guys know as well, on top of my standard and on top of that, I want to let you guys know that on top of my standard life path readings, I also offer mentorship classes. These are for any of my students seeking a more personalized educational experience with me. I take a very limited number of students for this reason, as those classes are focused on each individual's personal spiritual goals and journey work. Those classes can be purchased on an individual level or as a monthly class series, weekly or biweekly, as your schedule permits, so that you can stay more consistent on your personal journey. I'm also very happy to now offer as well, for those that are seeking more consistent weekly tarot support, weekly tarot insight packages, which is a package of 4 30-minute readings, again, weekly or biweekly as your schedule permits, so that you can stay more consistent on your personal journey. And I'm also very happy to offer dream interpretation readings, which you can purchase per dream or as a series. If you purchase the series, I would encourage you to make sure that you're starting to keep a dream journal, as we will meet weekly or bi-weekly with that journal and utilize the tarot to understand the key themes and messages coming towards you in the dream space. I want to thank you guys so much for being here today and sharing in these messages. And we will do this again tomorrow. That